This is episode 34 of Entrepreneurs for a Change. If you like this podcast, please subscribe to our mailing list at entrepreneursforachange.com. Are you ready to be the change? If so, you've come to the right place. You are about to join a movement of entrepreneurs who are empowering people, saving the planet, and turning their passion into profits while creating the lifestyle of their dreams. If you don't believe us, check out our website at entrepreneursforachange.com. A place where you can be inspired, mentored, and supported by a tribe of change-making entrepreneurs just like you. Hello, high-impact changemakers. This is Lorna Lee, host of another episode of Entrepreneurs for a Change, a web show about evolutionary entrepreneurs who are changing the world, making an impact, and designing businesses that allow them to live life on their own terms. My guest today is Chris Ducker, an entrepreneur and author of the book called Virtual Freedom, which has been plugged as an essential field guide for finding, hiring, training, and working with virtual teams. Now, I wish I had a copy of Virtual Freedom years ago when the 4-hour workweek came out, and everyone and their mother hopped onto the outsourcing bandwagon. I've known Chris for a while now and have learned loads from him over the years on how to hire virtual assistants right. Because, let me tell you, if you don't go about outsourcing the right way, it can cost you a lot of time and money and create frustration that will literally shave years off your life. Now, I can say from experience that every small business owner and entrepreneur, especially solopreneurs, should consider outsourcing early on, even if it means that it's an investment rather than a business cost. If you're an early-stage entrepreneur, I know that it's easy to think, I can't afford to hire anyone right now, or I just don't have the time to. So what ends up happening is you get caught up doing everything yourself, updating social media sites, writing blog posts, booking travel, going to the post office. I know you know what I mean. Virtual assistants can take on a lot of these duties. Well, maybe not the going to the post office part, but they do that so that you, as the business owner, can focus on the bigger picture. So here's what Chris and I say to you. Stop doing everything yourself. Stop it right now. You need to focus on the big picture. Strategy, cutting high-level deals, forging strategic partnerships, and playing in your zone of genius. Face it, if you're stuck doing menial tasks, your business will not grow. And when you're wearing too many hats, you can easily become overwhelmed and burned out. You'll lose productivity, creativity, and even miss opportunities that might be right in front of you. Another danger is, without the system and teams in place, your business depends entirely on you. So if a tragedy hits, your business goes down with it, and you don't want that. So figure out what your financial runway is and make hiring a team, or at least one VA, a virtual assistant, a priority. Every entrepreneur, even early-stage entrepreneurs, can afford to hire offshore contractors. So don't give me, I can't afford it. If you can't afford to pay a motivated, college-educated, English-speaking virtual assistant out of the Philippines for $3 an hour, you shouldn't be in business. Enough said. So Chris is going to share with us his words of wisdom on the power of outsourcing. During this interview, you will discover how to get started with outsourcing, specifically the process of identifying which tasks you should consider giving to a VA. When is a good time in your business to hire an offshore team? Where do you find qualified virtual assistants? The art of hiring the right people for the right role. Best practices for setting up a VA team for the long haul rather than going project by project. When it's time to let your virtual assistant go. And whether Chris, the outsourcing guru, believes in this age-old management strategy advice. Hire fast and fire faster. Awesome tools and resources mentioned in the interview can be found in the show notes at entrepreneursforchange.com/34. Now, if you want to get started fast with outsourcing, get Chris Ducker's book, Virtual Freedom, which we've linked to in the show notes, and also check out episode 25 with Trinity de Guzman, who travels the world while his virtual team does all the work. Trinity gives me awesome advice in this interview on how to hire the best talent and has provided his hiring swipe file, job and email templates, all done for you for free to our listeners. Now, before diving into the interview, I want to encourage you to rate, review, and download Entrepreneurs for a Change on iTunes. This really helps us reach more people with inspiring stories of entrepreneurs who are changing the world. Also, if these stories inspire you to start a world-changing business of your own, head over to our website at entrepreneursforchange.com and download the Business Changemakers Toolkit to get a jumpstart today. Now on to the show. Hello there, Chris. I'm so excited to have you with me on my podcast, and I've been watching the phenomenal launch of your book from the sidelines. So I'm so excited to have you share with our audience your expertise on outsourcing, because I know as solopreneurs and small business owners and early stage entrepreneurs, we all really need to figure out how we can focus on what we do best and hire other people to do the other tasks which they may be highly qualified at doing. So first, let's start with who you are and what you do.
Sure. Well, I focus on helping bring a little calm to the entrepreneurial storm, as I put it. And basically, I'm all about helping entrepreneurs get more focused in really growing their businesses. I believe that the entrepreneurial mindset, unfortunately, is one that obviously flies off at 100 miles an hour in a lot of different directions, usually. And so focus is an issue. And one of the big things with focus is that a lot of entrepreneurs waste a lot of time messing around with all these other little kind of tasks and projects and things like that really, honestly speaking, they should not be doing as a business owner. They should have somebody else or a team of somebody else's put that work together and handle that sort of stuff for them. And so, I'm all about sort of delegating and productivity and helping entrepreneurs grow their business in a smart fashion.
Great. So can you tell us a little bit more about your book, Virtual Freedom? What is virtual freedom exactly?
Is different for everybody, right? So, this is the thing, it's been a really nice discussion point, particularly over Twitter. If anybody's interested, you can check out the hashtag VFBook, and you'll see all the different stuff that people have been posting, and there's been photos of themselves with the book in all types of different situations and locations and whatnot. But no, virtual freedom is about living the entrepreneurial lifestyle the way you personally want to live it, right? So for some people, they might be happy working 40, 50 hours a week. Maybe they don't have a lot of responsibilities and a lot of personal things they need to take care of. But for most entrepreneurs out there, they don't like the idea of working 10, 12, 14 hours a day. They like the idea of being more streamlined, being more targeted with the stuff that they're doing from day to day. And so the book itself actually came about. I was originally contacted by a publishing company about 3 years ago to do this book, but I turned it down at the time because I was in the process of building one of my businesses, Virtual Staff Finder. We had been going for about a year, and we all know the first 3 years of a business lifespan is very, very important. So I kind of turned it down. It was the end of 2012 that I was approached by a literary agent, and basically, to cut a long story short, she was 100% positive she could get me a book deal, and she felt like the world needed the book, and she gave me a really good pitch, I'll be honest with you. So I said, okay, let's work on a proposal, we'll put it out there and see what happens. And so she sent it out to 16 publishers, and we got 4 offers on the manuscript. Considering that I hadn't even written the introduction to the book, not in any chapters, it was just 8 or 9 page proposal. And even she was a little surprised at that 25% buy-in. It's not normal. So for me, that kind of gave me the green light to think that, okay, well, look, if 4 completely separate publishing companies want to go ahead and publish the book, I guess, they know better than I do in terms of what people are going to buy. And so I decided to go ahead and take one of the offers and went ahead and wrote the book. It's been called The Essential Field Guide for Finding, Hiring, Training, and Working with Virtual Teams to Build Your Business. And that's not my words, that's somebody else's words, and I think that that's a perfect explanation as to what the book is.
Wow, I wish that book came out years ago. I would have saved myself a hell of a lot of time, energy,
me
money,
too.
and frustration. Oh my God.
I would have loved to have found it around the same time as 4 Hour Workweek. That would have been, those two books together, 7-8 years ago would have been a great 1-2 combination.
Oh my God, I would have I'd be in a very different place right now. So let's hop back to what inspired you to be an entrepreneur and specifically to start the business that you have now.
That's a good question. I mean, everybody's got slightly different light bulb moments, right? So, I mean, for me, I'd actually flirted with entrepreneurship for a few years, built a company and sold it, and then got offered a ridiculous amount of money to consult for a firm over in Miami in Florida. But I was still living here in the Philippines, and they were quite happy with that and all the rest of it. It just so happened that the guy that I ended up working with just was a nightmare. I mean, he was a lovely, lovely guy. Been in business for a long time, 30 plus years, very successful, multimillionaire, and just super nice guy until he turned into the boss. And then he was one of the biggest micromanaging pain in the butts I've ever come across in my entire career. And eventually I just had enough. I'd been in Miami for an entire month with him, working on some projects together. And on the flight, on the way home back to Asia, I was 37,000 feet in the air, and that was it. I was done. It just hit me there and then. I wasn't going to make $1 more for him or for anybody else. I was going to focus in on my own aspirations again. And so I wrote this true story. I wrote my resignation letter on the airplane, landed in Hong Kong, connected to their Wi-Fi in the airport, and hit the send button. And I never looked. And I mean, in regards to the Live to Sell group, which is my group of companies, there's 3 companies that make up the group. The first one is a call center, which is about 230 odd full-time staff currently. I also have Virtual Staff Finder, which is what I'm really known for business-wise online anyway, other than just my blog and podcast and stuff. So that's a VA recruitment company fundamentally. And then I also have a co-working space, which, is here in Cebu City. It's the only co-working space in the city. And it's for the use of startup entrepreneurs and small businesses and freelancers and everything else. So that's kind of the group of the companies. And but, the funny thing is, I've got to the point now where all those businesses are ultimately, for me personally, on somewhat of an autopilot. I tend to not have to work on them all that much at all anymore because of the staff, because of the delegation, because of the systems and the processes that are in place. So most of my time now is spent writing. I blog, I podcast, I speak regularly around the world. And, it's the fun stuff that I'm focusing on now more than anything else.
I love that. That's so awesome because I think, one of the biggest problems that I see is small business owners and solopreneurs still doing everything themselves, from going to the post office or updating their calendar. And it's so great to be able to have systems in place where you can focus on your zone of genius.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. As an entrepreneur, you're working for yourself ultimately, right? As well as your customers and whatnot. But I mean, and if you're not enjoying what you're doing, then there's a big issue there. There's a big problem there. There's a disconnect. And I think that as our own boss, so to speak, if we don't recognize that disconnect and then act upon it and make changes, we're kind of almost letting ourselves down as entrepreneurs, as that word is. We're letting ourselves down. The reason why we got into entrepreneurship in the first place is to be able to create our own destiny and, unleash our brilliance into the world. And if we're not happy doing what we're doing day to day, then you've got to make some changes.
So when do you think an entrepreneur, especially a bootstrapping solopreneur, should start considering hiring a team? And I would say that with regards to hiring a team, it doesn't actually have to involve hiring local talent from your city in the Western economy you might be living in. You could actually start hiring a team of folks who are offshore. So, when, starting with outsourcing, when do you think is a good time in the business to begin?
Well, I think it's a good time to consider it from the outset, to be honest with you, as an option. I don't think that outsourcing and VAs and virtual teams and whatnot is as much of a kind of hidden secret to the rich and successful as it once was, right? I mean, everybody knows about outsourcing now. Any kind of savvy entrepreneur is going to understand the importance of not trying to do everything themselves, and that there is some help out there. But when you bring up the subject of bootstrapping, obviously it's going to be easier for some people, and it'll be a faster connection in terms of getting started with outsourcing for some entrepreneurs, and it will be for others, purely down to financial constraints. And when you are starting your business and you're bootstrapping and you're just getting going, it is tough to outlay a single dollar more than you absolutely have to. And so, I always say that when the time comes to outsource, you'll know. Like, your gut will tell you as an entrepreneur. The entrepreneur's gut is the biggest ingredient to their secret sauce, as far as I'm concerned. Because if you follow your gut, you'll very rarely, very, very rarely decide it was a bad idea to tell yourself no. You will regret saying yes quite regularly, but you'll very rarely regret saying no. And so following your gut and, understanding that eventually overwhelm will hit, opportunities will start to get lost. And at this point, it's the time to start seriously thinking about the potential of bringing on board additional people, even if it's just on a task-by-task basis. It doesn't need to be part-time or full-time. It just needs to be someone out there that can do the job properly, within a timely fashion, and on budget for you, so that you can focus on the bigger picture. And I think that's the green light that every entrepreneur needs, is just to understand that there is another way to do this. You don't have to juggle all those balls yourself, because sooner or later you're going to start dropping the balls, and that's going to cost you a lot of money.
So do you think there's any wisdom to getting started building a team early on, even if it actually causes you as an early stage entrepreneur to go cash flow negative?
No, I don't think there's any wisdom in that at all. I really don't. Unless you know that there's going to be an actual payout around the corner from it. I mean, somebody comes to you with a job worth $10,000, and you're going to get paid net 30 days after the job is completed, which is going to be 30 days from now, and you have to outlay $4,000 to get somebody to do the work for you, knowing full well that you're not going to see that $10,000 for 60 days to get your profit margin. If you can afford to go in the red and then, hold your breath for 60 days until you get paid, then that's fine. But I don't see the point in any entrepreneur spending $1 more than they have to on anything, based upon obviously their level of expectation and how, important the quality is to them and all the rest of it. I faced bankruptcy almost 6 months into business with the Live to Sell group. I had 2 weeks worth of money, payroll-wise, left in my bank account. And I had to make massive entrepreneurial pivots from a business perspective to make sure I didn't go into the red. And I didn't go into the red. I saved the company. I turned it around in 2 weeks, and we went from 15 members of staff to 200 and plus within 24 months. So every time we've expanded our business, we have always done it from profit. We've never done it from loans. We don't own a single dollar to a bank, to any kind of credit. Everything we pay for is bought and paid for in cash, so to speak. We don't need terms. We don't want them. It is what it is. And so I don't see the point in entrepreneurs bringing on board undue stress in their life by getting into debt, particularly early on in their business, if they can do anything to avoid it.
Okay, that's really wise advice, because I know a lot of entrepreneurs are, it's a bit of a catch-22 scenario where, in order to scale and be able to position yourself to get more business, or even to get more business, sometimes it's hard to do that if you're doing everything yourself. So I do wonder whether it makes sense to say, okay, starting off in a business, because a lot of business owners do invest in their businesses to begin with before they start turning a profit. So would you consider putting together a team as part of the initial investment into growing your business? I mean,
oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, if you're, let's say for example, you're going to create a company that's going to build web apps, okay? Whereas something like that, all you need is 2 or 3 really good projects under your belt, and word of mouth will start working for you anyway. You won't have to do a lot of marketing, won't have to do a lot of advertising, that sort of type. You know, if you're any kind of creative agency, a large majority of your new business is going to come through referral sources, right? So if you're going to start a company like that and you're going to get to the point where you have X amount of dollars ready to outlay from the moment you start off your business, you're going to need to invest in people. You're going to need to invest in designers, in developers, in coders, you know, all these types of people that you need for that sort of type of business to get off the ground. A startup investment is a startup investment. Whether you're investing in equipment, in space, in an experience for yourself, maybe you're going to a conference or something to network and make new contacts, or whether you're hiring staff. You know, an investment is an investment. What I mean to say is that there's no need to get yourself into undue financial stress early on in your business. If you can truly avoid it, you absolutely should, because you'll perform a lot better as an entrepreneur if you're not stressed out and if you're not worried about the doors shutting next Friday. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then, looking at the investment in a team and in talent is something very different from that. I mean, if you do it strategically, for example. Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay, great. So how should a business owner get started with outsourcing?
I have an exercise that I talk about in Virtual Freedom, which is in the first section of the book. I call it my 3 lists to freedom exercise. And it's an exercise that actually I bring up over and over and over again throughout the course of the book because it's that important. And so basically what you do, and it's almost like you're creating a virtual brain dump of everything that you're doing day to day. So the first list is a list of all the things that you don't like doing. These are tasks that, quite frankly, you hate doing, but you need to do them day to day because your business demands them of you, right? So that's the first list. The second list is a list of all the things that you feel that you can't do. Now, this is where what I call superhero syndrome comes into play, because as entrepreneurs, we like to think that we are the kings of our universe and that nobody can do anything better than us. You know what I mean? So, that's a list that is a little hard to put together. But if you think about it logically, there's a lot of stuff that you struggle with as an entrepreneur. Like, I'm not a graphic designer. I know how I want a business card to look like or a website to look like, but I can't use Photoshop for the love of money. So why am I messing around with that? Get someone else to do it for $150. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's the second list, a list of all the things that you can't do or you struggle doing. And then the last list is by far probably the most important of the 3, because it's a list of all the things that you shouldn't be doing. These are things that day to day you're doing, but you shouldn't be doing as the business owner. And this is why it's so tough. The reasons why it's so tough is, number one, you might like doing these tasks. Number 2, you might actually be really, really good at them as well. But like I said, the question you've got to ask yourself with this last list is, should I be doing them? Could I be spending my time doing more important things for the growth of my business, like strategizing for new products or services, or putting in place new contracts with potential clients, or building out a calendar of business travel and conferences to network and find new people to do business with, and so on and so on. That's what business owners should be doing. They should not be updating their bloody Facebook status. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's, what are you doing this stuff? Seriously, why are you doing your online research? Why are you booking your own flights? Why are you messing around on Pinterest? There's no reason for any of that. There's no reason for business owners to do any of that at all, unless they're suffering from superhero syndrome. There's other people out there that can do that stuff for you, and you can be looking at a much, much bigger picture. I mean, if I said to you, Lorna, don't post anything to Facebook for a month. Interact on Facebook, yes, but don't be the one to physically find the image, find the link, find the video, go in there, post it up there, blah, 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 blah. If I said that to you, I guarantee you right now, you probably have on average around 20 hours extra each month. How about if you were to, just that one task, right? How about if you were to take those 20 hours and invest it in putting together a 5-video training course on how to start a business blog, and then sell that $47 as an introductory course to your mailing list?
Yes, a way better use of time. Although
much better. better.
I do say that I get a lot of really good information out of Facebook, largely because most of my interactions tend to be within business groups, like private business groups that have other entrepreneurs in them. So
I'm not saying that that's not a good thing to do. What I am saying is that you shouldn't let it be all-consuming. And if there are things that you can palm off, and you know what I'm talking about, you know the kind of things that you're doing on Facebook that you can probably get someone else to do on your behalf for you. And Facebook is purely just an example. You know, there's so many more things like, searching for hotels. When you travel to a city, go to hotels.com or go to .com, you type in the address or, the city where you are. There's so many different options. There's so many different things to consider. Is it a king or a twin room? Is it free Wi-Fi? Do I have to pay? Is breakfast included or not? Even if you're just coming up with 5 options for a hotel in New York City, that's an hour. If you're going to do it properly, that's an hour to come up with 5 solid options. You can get your VA to do that for you. Then all you need to do is look at those 5 hotels quickly and figure out which one's got the prettiest lobby. You know what I mean? It's really that simple. There's so much of this stuff that people are doing. They're just spinning their wheels, and there's just no need for it.
I completely agree. Now, when I think about my early days of trying to outsource before your book came out, I basically wanted to find a clone of myself, Chris, and then I soon discovered that I actually couldn't find a clone of myself. And so, this whole dream of finding somebody to be my super VA who was, good at doing everything, it was a bit of a pipe dream. So I started to approach hiring offshore contractors differently. And I basically now look at people and their specific skill or expertise area. And so I'd love for you to share with us any best practices that you recommend around setting up a virtual team. So for the long haul, actually, not just project-based.
The big thing is hiring for the role and not for a bunch of tasks. I talk in the book about the super VA myth, that a lot of entrepreneurs make the mistake that when they get going, first of all, with outsourcing, they feel like they can get one person to do all the work for them. Like you say, a clone of Lorna, And thankfully for the world, there's only one Chris Ducker and there's only one Lorna as well. And cloning is... Did they clone a sheep? I think they cloned a sheep years ago, right?
They've cloned sheep.
Right. I don't think they've quite got to the human element yet. But I mean, it doesn't exist, and there is no one person who can update your blog and edit your videos and, launch your podcast and blog for you and build out courses and membership sites. There's no one person that can do all that stuff because you're talking about several different people. The analogy I like to use is building a house, right? So when you're building a house, the first thing you do is you work with an architect to design the house. Okay, I just want to clarify that. You work with an architect because that's what he does. He designs houses. You don't work with a bricklayer to design your house. You work with a bricklayer to start building your house. And then you bring a plumber in to handle all the plumbing because that's what plumbers do. Then there's an electrician. You see where I'm going with this? Then there's a roofer. Then, you know what I mean? So you use the right people for the right roles, and you don't try and mix and match those roles. Would you let a plumber install your electrical cables in and out of all of your rooms and the floorboards and the walls of your house? Of course not. So why would you expect a web developer to be a good content writer? There's no need to think that's going to work. But we do think that because we want to try and get more bang for our buck. And we'd like to think that we can hire just one person and have everything done. But it's not as simple as that. So the first rule of hiring to build a team is to hire for the role and not for the task. It's a very, very clear rule. And once you get to that point, you can then start to build a team in a very strategic manner. I mean, usually the first hire that I suggest most modern-day entrepreneurs look at is a general VA, a GVA. And these people will do things like, your flights, the things we've talked about already, handling your travel itineraries, updating your social media, managing a blog for you, not writing the content, but helping you, lay the content out and bold things and link things and hit the publish button for you and all that sort of stuff. And, online research, transcribing your voicemails and emailing them to you once a day. All these little things that take you time, when added up, will literally buy you an extra 40, 50 hours a week. Huge, huge for any business owner. So that's a GVA role. And then you get to the other roles like web developers, graphic designers, maybe SEO people if you're really sort of online web kind of focused. There are content writers, there are web developers, podcast editors, video guys, there's so many different types of roles, bookkeepers, they go on and on and on, for you to be able to inject into your business as it grows to build your virtual team so that ultimately you'd end up with maybe potentially 4, 5, maybe 6 different people doing 6 very different jobs for you. And then at that point, you're probably going to be ready to promote your GVA, who's been with you for a year or two at this point, into a project manager. So you can stop running the team yourself, because what will happen is you get 4 or 5 people on board and you just end up being a people manager, not a business owner anymore. So now you're back to square one when you started this whole thing, right? So at that point, you want to get your project manager on board and get them to work with the team, and then you work directly with that one person to run your business. It's almost like an assistant manager, so to speak.
I love it. That's brilliant. It's so great to actually get there. I've been going through that process myself, and I have somebody who's in that, kind of like a wing woman role, and it's just been like a huge time saver, huge. So how and where do you find a good VA?
Well, I mean, there's so many different places now for this that, it can sometimes be a little bit overwhelming. The job posting sites are a great place to start because you can just outsource 1 or 2 tasks, get your feet wet a little bit. And, there's sites like Elance and Odesk and Freelancer and whatnot. There's so many out there. If you're looking for anything graphic related, I always suggest 99 Design. They're a great resource, and for $400 or $500, you can have, 50, 60 graphic designers design your landing page or your website or a flyer or a logo or whatever. And then you just end up, picking the one you like the most and going from there. So it's a very good source for anything graphic related. But when you look at web developers, Eastern Europe is a big hotspot right now. Some amazing talent coming out of Eastern Europe for web developers and coders and things like that. But ultimately, any of the job posting sites are a good place to start.
Yeah, I think I've actually tried all of them.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
So, I'm going to be honest. I've had so many frustrating experiences with offshore virtual assistants, from, web developers that, take my deposit money and just vanish, to having, kind of like more general VAs and having to like spell out every detail of the job to the point that it would actually have been faster for me to do it myself. I have virtual assistants pad their hours or do poor quality work, and then after several attempts at working with the person, then I say, hey, look, I can't have you work for me anymore if you don't pay attention to these details. And and it's very difficult to let them go because they seem to really want to do a good job and keep with the role. So I'm kind of curious about this, I guess, adage or piece of advice in the business world, which is hire fast and fire faster. What do you think about that? Is that something that you practice, Chris?
No, I do the exact opposite, actually. I hire very, very slowly, but I do fire very quickly. Half of it I follow, the other half I don't. I'm all about taking my time when I hire people. If I hire people to work within my facility, I have at least 2 interviews before they'll get to a final interview. A lot of the time, I'm not even hiring these people anymore myself. I only really hire executive management now. I mean, we're talking about a company with 200 plus staff, so I can't hire every single person that we need. That's why I've got other management in place, and I empower them to make those decisions for both themselves, for me, and for the company. But no, I do. I hire very, very slowly. Most VAs that I will hire with nowadays, I will know through other people, so I know that they're trustworthy and they can get the work done and stuff like that. But even if I don't, I still make sure that I follow up on references. And this is one of the big things about working on those job posting sites. You see their history of work. They look like they can do the work. Their written communication looks solid. But how do you know they haven't paid, a native English speaker to write their cover letter for them? Right? You just don't know. I mean, maybe they're outsourcing that part of it themselves. You just don't know. So, it is a little hit and miss sometimes. But you should certainly not feel bad about letting someone go if they're not doing a good job for you. I think the quickest I've ever fired somebody is about 20 minutes, literally. and she was a new PA. She was working with me. And it just goes to show you, even with all my hiring experience, sometimes I get it wrong as well. We had, I think 2 interviews before it came to me. She was going to be one of our assistants internally. And on her first day of work, she brought me a cup of coffee into my office. And at the same time, before she walked out, she asked me who she talked to about booking holiday time. And I was just like, what? I couldn't believe it, Lorna. You got to be kidding me. You've been here 20 minutes. You're asking about booking a holiday already?
I don't know what to say.
I was completely bamboozled by the request. I just said, you know what? It's not going to work out. You can pack up your stuff and leave now. She went, you're firing me? I said, yeah, because you obviously don't want to be here. So what's the point? You might as well just leave. So that was the quickest I've ever fired somebody, literally. But yeah, it's like anything else. When you hire somebody virtually, you can pretty much do everything that you can do when you're hiring somebody physically to work in an office space now. You can see them by hopping on the Skype video. You can speak with them at least by just hopping on the plain old good old-fashioned Skype. You should absolutely contact people that are listed as references. And if you're on the job posting sites, you contact people that they've done work with before and ask them about their experiences. Invest a little bit of time up front in hiring people the right way, and you'll have less misses and more hits. Just the nature of the job posting kind of industry is that people will post a job, they'll get a load of people reply. Sometimes 100 plus people will apply for the role or for the task, the job, project, whatever, and they'll just hire one of the best people that they communicate with via email because they've got stuff to do, it's time sensitive, etc., etc. It's a bad move to do that, man. You must do your homework. You must get on the phone with them, or Skype rather. You must speak with at least 1 or 2 people that they've listed as people that they've worked with before. And if you don't, then, if it doesn't work out, you've only got yourself to blame as far as I'm concerned. And this is actually one of the reasons why we set up Virtual Staff Finder 4 years ago, was because we understand a lot of entrepreneurs don't want to do all that stuff. So we do it for them for a fee. And so, that was the reason why we set the company up. It was to fill that void and save people time. And even Virtual Staff Finder doesn't get it right every now and then. So, we have a massive hit percentage of about 92% of all hires stick. But, that 8% is just proof of the pudding that, not everybody can get it right all the time. Even a company that does it for an average of 100 entrepreneurs every single month,
Yeah, it's working with people, especially keeping your team members motivated, can be really a challenge too. Because I think one of the things that I've noticed in my years of working with offshore talent is that sometimes it starts off really well, and but there is the distance, the virtual aspect. I mean, the fact that the person's not coming and to work and being in your presence on a daily fashion, that does somehow I think add an additional layer of challenge. And so what I've been finding is that typically, or frequently, after a few months, like it might start off like with a lot of enthusiasm and motivation, and then after a few months sometimes I see a major slack off, and then it starts pulling me into a direction I don't like to go in, which is, I guess kind of like your example in the very beginning, from being a really nice person to becoming a micromanaging whipcracker. And I don't want to be that. So when do you know if it's time to let that person go because they are not keeping up their end of the teamwork, or if you are simply not doing a good enough job keeping them motivated? Right,
exactly. And I mean, I get all that. I totally understand everything that you said right now. I hear it every single day from entrepreneurs. And the fact of the matter is that it's a gut thing again. I think, once this person is not delivering on their end of the bargain, you have to start questioning it immediately. And, I'm kind of a one or two strikes and you're out kind of guy, because I'm paying you to do a job properly. And if you're not doing it A, properly, or B, on time, or even C, to the level that I need it done at, I'll tell you one, and you will listen to me. Because if you don't, I won't tell you another time, and it'll be over and done with. I can't build my business I can't support my community and my customers with employees and staff that are half-assed in the way that they do what they're doing for me. It's not possible. Think about it. It's not possible to do that. So, if someone is not bringing you the value that they either, once were or that you truly need them to, you got to let them go. And you got to let them go sooner rather than later. I really am, when I say, okay, I'll give you another chance, but this is it. Don't blow this chance here because you're not going to get another one. I'm very strict with that. If I say something like that to somebody, if they screw up again in the same way, they're done. You got to be a little harsh. You have to be.
Okay, great. That's very good advice.
I mean, Donald Trump has been firing people on TV for years. It hasn't hurt his image too much.
Wow, okay. Well, on that note, I would love to keep talking to you more, Chris, but we're coming to the end of our interview, so I'd like to leave you with two last questions. One, to uplift our audience after the firing conversation.
Yeah, what is this all about? This was supposed to be a really positive conversation about building teams. What we've done for the last 10 minutes is talk about firing people. But it is, we joke about it.
Yeah.
It's not the most positive thing in the world to talk about, right? I get it. And we do jest a little bit here. But the fact of the matter is, it's reality. This is business. People get fired. If they can't do the damn job that they're getting paid to do, you got to can them. You have to. You're not here to build their careers. You're here to build your business. And so, if they can't come to the party with, a decent bottle of booze, you got to kick them out. They're not welcome. Plain simple. You got to move on.
Yeah, I think this is a really valuable conversation to have. It's because, books like The 4-Hour Workweek make it seem like, wow, like this golden light shining in the horizon, like hire a VA and to outsource your life. And the truth is, you can find really great talent. And I have people that I've been working with for a long time already, years. But it took a while to find them. But I'm so grateful. I've got this awesome graphic design team out of India. I've got this fantastic podcast producer in the Philippines. So, it's just, hard for us to, learn how to deal with the not so fun aspects of building a team and building your business. So, I'm very grateful for your candid advice on how to deal with this. So now to switch gears, I'd love to ask you this. Chris, what do you think is the most effective way to change the world?
To solve problems for people. I think that's what being an entrepreneur is. In fact, actually, I did an interview a few months back and somebody asked me, what's your definition of an entrepreneur? And I said, it's somebody that provides answers to people's questions and solutions to people's problems. And I think at the core of it, that is exactly what an entrepreneur is. And if we're here with a good idea, with a good product or a service or an experience, something that people can, utilize and make their lives better, then you're doing a good job as an entrepreneur. I mean, when Walt Disney first came up with that funny little mouse idea and decided to build the first Disneyland, who would have known that it would have, just catapulted into what that company is today? I don't know if you've ever been to Disneyland before, but I love Disneyland. I'm a 40-year-old male from London who just loses his marbles in Anaheim and on as much of a regular basis as possible. I'm not joking.
And you're not on drugs?
No, definitely not high at the time. I'm going to show you that. I've been to Disneyland in Hong Kong. I don't know. I've lost count now. 8, 9 maybe times. I don't know. Because it's easy for us to get over there. It's a 3-hour flight from the Philippines. But no, that's a perfect example of changing the world. That's the experience that company creates, is that Disneyland experience. And that's how Walt Disney changes the world. How does Chris Ducker change the world? Well, through my writing and through my speaking and through the companies that I have created, I enable entrepreneurs to buy more time ultimately and become more productive in what they're doing as business builders. Ask yourself that question when we're done with this call, and everybody listening in, ask yourselves that question as well, because I think it's an important one. And I'm glad you asked it because, we can sometimes lose track a little bit, through the pivots that we do, and we do pivot quite regularly as entrepreneurs to help build our businesses. We can sometimes get a little lost. And I think it's important to pull ourselves back onto the track and kind of, get back into the bigger picture stuff on a regular basis.
Love it. Okay, Chris, how can we best stay in touch with you?
Well, the blog, chrisducker.com. That's my main sort of online home. Everything is sort of linked up there. And obviously Twitter @ChrisDucker. And the book site is virtualfreedombook.com. And that's about it, really. I've got a lot more websites, but I'm pretty sure you probably don't have another 45 minutes to discuss them. Well, those three. Let me just tell you, I got to tell you, let me finish with this little story right here. I spoke at the Google London campus a few weeks back when I was in London. And it was my first time to do a Google talk. And so I didn't quite know what to expect, but I knew there was going to be lots of passionate entrepreneurs there. So I just did a quick survey at the beginning of my presentation, and I just asked everybody to raise their hand if at some point in their lives they had left the shower mid-rinse to register a domain name. And I kid you not, about half the room put their hands up. There must have been about 150 people in this room, and it just goes to show you how our minds work as entrepreneurs. We do. I don't know how many domain names you have. I culled my list about 6 months ago, and I now own about, I think, 40 or so, but it was well over.
I've been culling. Yeah, I've definitely been culling.
You've got to, because it just gets out of shape. It really does. So I'm sorry to screw up the ending of your show with that little story, but never mind. There you go.
Well, I think the moral of the story is we entrepreneurs can also tend to have monkey mind. And so sometimes it's really good to then have a team so that we can do some monkey minding, more of the monkey minding, right, while the work is still getting done.
Exactly. I've never even heard that term before, monkey mind. I like that. I like in England, we use words like scatterbrain and things like that. So I like that. That's a cool term.
All right. Thank you so much, Chris. You have a beautiful day in paradise.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. You too.
All right. Bye-bye. Thanks, folks, for listening to the Entrepreneurs for a Change podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please help us reach more people with inspiring stories like this one by giving us a 5-star rating in iTunes. If this podcast inspires you to join the movement of change-making entrepreneurs, we'd love to give you a jumpstart with our free Business Changemakers Toolkit, which you can download at www.entrepreneursforachange.com/join. If you have a changemaker in mind you'd love for us to interview, go to entrepreneursforachange.com/suggest and tell us who and why. Finally, feel free to stop by facebook.com/entrepreneursforachange to share your thoughts and say hello.